Hello, my lovelies, and welcome back to another episode of Dan and I talking epic warriors of Middle-earth. And today we have something special for you, and it's Dan. It's the first girl we're talking about, right? So a female warrior in her own right, who is
Lúthien, the First Lady of the Legendarium.
exactly the beautiful Lúthien, who is not just beautiful, she is actually an epic warrior. And this is why we're talking about her today. Obviously, she's not fighting with a bow and an arrow or with a sword. She fights in different ways and has other techniques. But
Yes,
yeah,
we're stretching the definition of the warrior a little bit again, but I would say if she's in your D&D party, she's the mage who's doing the crowd control, and
yeah.
she's key to your battle strategy.
Yes, exactly. Well, I mean, the thing is, she's fighting Sauron, right, with help and everything. But it's more about, the thought of her accompanying her man, basically, and not being the damsel in distress. Quite the opposite, actually. So although she's a princess, So yeah, I just love her story. And John and I did actually a video about this. Is just to tell the people who are watching what this will be about, because normally we go through the whole story and what happened when and everything. We won't do that today because John and I literally have a video which I'll link down below if I don't forget it. So we talked about the book of the three great tales of Beren and Lúthien. So we went through all that. So Dan and I tonight will rather be talking about influences. Dan has something really cool prepared as an intro for this video when I stop talking. And so I'll talk about influences and about literally this is a mix of so many fairy tales and myths and biblical references. There's so much in there. So this is what this will be about. But obviously about her and her storyline. So Dan, let's start with what Helen just mentioned with the reference.
So as you said, there are lots of sources for Lúthien. There's a bunch of stuff in there. There always is, lots of sources for a lot of the stories, especially in the Silmarillion era stuff. There's a bunch of stuff there, but the primary source, I think it's fair to say, for Lúthien's character was Tolkien's own wife. Yes. So her story is an incredibly personal one to him. I think a lot of Tolkien fans probably know this already, but they were buried with the tombstones with the headstone saying Beren and Lúthien.
Yep.
You've been there, I think. I haven't.
I have. Yes, it's so beautiful. Yeah. I have a picture of me standing there.
So yes, I wanted to do a reading of just an excerpt from I think it's letter 334. I haven't written it down. From the collections of Tolkien's letters to there's letters in there to all sorts of people, but a lot of them are to his children, and this one's to his son Michael.
For once, it's not Christopher, who he wrote in the war times and everything, many letters to. It's Michael. Yay.
Favorite. So it's this is the excerpt, and it says, in 1904, Hilary and I, that's Tolkien's brother, Hilary and I had the sudden miraculous experience of Father Francis's love and care and humor, and only 5 years later, the equivalent of 20 years experience in later life, I met the Lúthien Tinúviel of my own personal romance, with her long dark hair, fair face and starry eyes and beautiful voice. And in 1934 she was still with me and her beautiful children. But now she has gone before Beren, leaving him indeed one-handed, but he has no power to move the inexorable Mandos, and there is no Dor Girth Ichwinar, the land of the dead that live, in this fallen kingdom of Arda where the servants of Morgoth are worshipped. So, yeah.
Yep.
Sorry to start us off on a downer, but I thought that was a really good introduction for how much of an important character this was to him.
Yes, and that he didn't just take the references which I just mentioned, from ancient texts, from biblical references, from fairy tales. He took it from his own life,
She was inspired by an experience where he fell in love.
The dance, yes.
Yeah, the dance, which actually happened.
Yeah. But this is not how they met. It's not like how Beren and Lúthien met and how Edith and Tugin met, right? But still, it's the reference is there. So let's maybe start with some facts about Lúthien, because I think that is a little bit important. So obviously Lúthien is her story is not, it's not in Lord of the Rings. I think we have in the 3 books, we have one reference when Aragorn is actually singing about Beren and Lúthien and referencing it. And if you
could... my favorite poem in Lord of the Rings, that poem.
Is it?
Yeah, I love that poem so much.
Yeah, it's good. And it's even in the movies. Partly. Sort
of, yeah. There's a tiny bit of it in the movies. And I said this in my most recent video on my channel where I talked about that scene, and Aragorn sings it, and then Frodo pipes up and he's like, "Who is this elven woman that you're singing about? Lúthien. What happened to her?" Meh, she died.
She died. Okay.
Okay, thanks for that.
Thanks for the information. Yeah, but when you know that literally the story of Arwen and Aragorn is mirroring the story, and they're descendants of Beren and Lúthien. I mean, very they're not closely related. I think we can say that, but they're descendants of both. And so it is beautiful that this story in the Lord of the Rings actually mirrors, and I don't think that many people know that. And that's so cool that Aragorn then sings it, because it's not just his forefathers and his ancestors. It's basically a very similar story of an elven princess falling in love with a mortal. And you said also in your video, which I found super interesting, I'll link that one below because it was so good and I loved it, if I don't forget, and it's so beautiful because I forgot what I want to say. Oh yeah, because the concept of a immortal and a mortal falling in love, and it's literally just females who are the immortals, and then the males are always the mortals. There's no other version. There's one version of, and I didn't look this up, and now people will call me out again in the comment section, but there is one story of, and I do not remember who it is, but a mortal woman, and I think it is, isn't it Andreth as well? It is when Finrod talks to Andreth, and this is the story of the dialogue about humanity and mortals versus
mortality. Yes.
So beautiful. It's Finrod e Andreth, I think it's called. And and I think she was in love with, and I forgot now whom, but an elven prince of the Noldor, and he wanted it to happen, but the concept is always, the women grow old and they obviously die, and for some reason Tolkien never made that happen. But with Idril falling in love with Tuor, and there are some exceptions to mortals and immortals. So Aragorn and Arwen and Lúthien and Beren are not the only ones, but they're not that many.
Yeah. I think there's one other, which was the Lothlorien story of Amroth, and I forget the woman's name. That was a mortal and an elf as well, I think. But no, I've forgotten.
Well, the princess of Dol Amroth, exactly. Exactly, but she was not a princess or anything. She was an elf. But you're completely right. She married. I think while they were traveling, she fell in love with one of the forefathers of the then princess of Dol Amroth, and that whole line is actually where Faramir and Boromir are from that line, interestingly enough, and so they have an elven ancestor, just like Aragorn does. Yep, exactly. So yes, Lúthien. So she was the princess of Doriath. Doriath, a kingdom, which no longer exists. Sadly, doesn't have anything to do with the Baron and Lúthien storyline per se. It falls a bit later. Their son. Spoiler: they have a son, Dia, and his grandfather and Thingol are in that storyline. But she's the princess of Doriath. She's the only child of Melian the Maya and King Thingol.
Let's talk about that a little bit because
Yes.
that's really interesting. Because so as we say, I mean, there's this like lineage of half elf and Peredil. They're called Perithil. I think it's pronounced like a th. This line actually started with an elf marrying up again, marrying a Maya.
Exactly. So that's even higher.
Yeah, it's like there's like this chain of men marrying up, and there's this sort of the word that I've heard used for it is ennoblement of that line, that lineage. And my recent video, that's what I was kind of hinting at, was there was this kind of like divine, holy, fated bloodline that's like runs through the entire legendarium that you can see Aragorn being the culmination of. But yeah, Lúthien being the daughter of Melian, she has some special abilities, doesn't she?
Exactly, because Melian, like Sauron, is a Maya. Not, we can't compare them. They have different. All the Maya have different abilities and strengths and powers, but Lúthien was definitely more than just a elf, which is in the concept of elf is obviously they are more powerful than humans, but she was even more powerful.
And I think in the story it says that Melian actually taught her some of her abilities. So the song that she sings to grow her hair in that scene where she escapes from the treehouse. I'm pretty sure this.
Hello.
Yes. Yeah.
But then Melian also taught Galadriel, which is, Galadriel is not her daughter, and she also taught her stuff, right? Which Galadriel then later used for herself and for Lothlorien, which is super interesting because they were not related. Galadriel was not half Maya. Sorry.
No, but she was a mentor to Galadriel as well.
Yes.
And the girdle of Melian, which is the sort of magic spell that she casts over the whole kingdom, it's actually quite similar to how Galadriel is said to sort of protect Lothlorien with her kind of magic.
Exactly.
That kind of connection is never like distinctly kind of drawn to in any particular passage, but it's there. It's an obvious like thematic inspiration behind that. And I think it's an instance of Tolkien kind of borrowing from the Silmarillion tradition when he wrote Galadriel, and then he retconned it back so that she became like the student of Melian.
Exactly, because Galadriel was not in the first concept of the Silmarillion. She didn't play a role there.
But yeah, it's cool. And there's a passage where Beren first meets Lúthien. There's a bit where the narrative in the Silmarillion version, at least, it describes the singing being like a lark or a nightingale, that's obviously directly from Melian, she had nightingales following her around wherever she went.
And I mean, her second name, the name Beren gave her is Tinúviel, which means nightingale. And I do think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think in the older versions, I think in the Lay of Lúthien and the Tale of Tinúviel, her original name was Tinúviel and was not,
Yeah, even in the version that Aragorn tells in Lord of the Rings, it's referred to as the Tale of Tinúviel in the text, when the way he tells it, which is his translation of the Elvish song.
Exactly. Which is like, again, he was a philologist, right? But those names, how fitting are they? Like, Tinúviel, like if I ever have a girl, I'll give her like her third name will be Tinúviel because it's fitting and it tells you so much, even though we obviously don't speak Elvish, but it's really cool. I love the name. Yeah.
There's a thematic link to a few other characters as well, because there's this connection with nightingales being birds that sing in the nighttime.
Yes.
And then there's Arwen Evenstar, who's the star of the evening, and there's the connection with her and with Erendil, who is the star of the morning and the evening, which is the star of Venus, because he, spoiler if you don't know the end of the Silmarillion, turns into a star. And
Elwing becomes a bird. You know, his wife becomes a bird. She goes into the water and then becomes a bird.
So there's echoes of this story is kind of like it's the genesis of a whole bunch of echoes of the same story throughout the history.
Yes.
So it's so important.
And they are the founders of that house, of the line of Elrond and Aragorn and the Númenóreans. You know, they are so. I mean, yes, Eärendil obviously is, and Idril and Tuor are, because they basically started it. But still, I think these two are very important to the story and to what happens later. And it's not for nothing that Aragorn and Arwen mirror that later then. So so we talked a bit about Thingol and Melian, her parents, and she was an only child. And she lived like a normal, quite normal life for a really long time until she danced in the forest of Neldoreth, I think it is, in Beleriand, and met Beren wasn't somebody unimportant, right? He is from also like a royal line, and that comes then later into play when he meets the father-in-law, which you made a really cool comment once, and I think we will talk about that, the quest her father puts him on, which is so cool and also fairy tale. But so they meet in the forest, fall in love. They mirror her parents actually, which met the same way, and also fell in love. And I think we can fast forward. We don't need to know what happened there, but we can fast forward to she brings him to meet the dad, and then
she does. Yeah.
Dan, what happens?
Well, he Thingol is not my favorite character in the Silmarillion.
He gets redeemed later on, though.
He goes back and forth a little bit.
And then the accident with the dwarf. So you're right. Yeah.
That wasn't his finest hour either. The dwarves aren't obviously innocent either, but
I know.
But Thingol, basically he's very kind of. I have an issue with his sort of parochialism, and also with his kind of sense of like. How do you put this? I mean, it's like his daughter is his property, basically, and it's a very sort of old-fashioned kind of medieval perspective on fatherhood and having a daughter who's like chattel, where he basically sort of he kind of says this mortal is not good enough to marry my daughter. How dare he have the nerve to even approach me? How dare he, even look at my daughter in that way?
But do you think it is just because he is a mortal? Because later on, listen, hear me out.
Well, he has a bunch of insults for him, though, doesn't he? It's mortal, it's baseborn, he says, I think, which is not true, which Beren soon points out. I am not baseborn.
And he has the ring to prove it and the heritage to prove it. Yeah, no, you're right. But hear me out. So later on, when Lúthien gets captured, right, by the brothers, by the Noldorian princes, I always mix up the names. Is it Curufin and Celegorm? I think so. I think it's those two. And she gets captured. And one of them, don't remember which one, wants to marry her. And Thingol doesn't like that either. I mean, that could be now because he doesn't like the Princess of the Noldor. He's okay with Galadriel, but that's just because she's of Teleri a heritage as well. Oh, damn. We lost Dan. Okay, people, we're back. I tried to edit this together as good as possible. But Dan just dropped out and I kept talking about stuff, kept rambling on, and I didn't even notice Dan stopped moving. So we'll go back to I told Dan, hear me out. And what I wanted to say is, and sorry if you hear this twice now, sorry, not sorry. So what I wanted to say is Corofin and Kelegom. I think those are the two. They took Lúthien hostage, and one of them wanted to marry her, and Thingol also didn't like that. Now that could be because they were princes of the Noldor, and he disliked the princess of the Noldor. He was okay with Galadriel and that bunch because they were of Telerian descendant as well. So that was okay for him. But
you mean Banya, I think. Well, Galadriel was, and he certainly. Galadriel was Teleri as well, actually, though, wasn't she?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay,
yeah.
Go on. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
But yes, Vanya as well. And because Fëanor's father's dad, the second wife, she was Vanya. You're right there. But Galadriel's mother was Teleri, so she was kind of so she was related to Thingol, and so that was okay. But he disliked strongly, and you can see that in the Silmarillion so many times because he doesn't partake in the fights of the Noldor against Morgoth and Sauron, and he does not like them. So that could be that. But then they were elven princes, so who does she like? Who would he be okay with? Probably nobody.
Maybe do you think he would have been happy with Daeron, the singer?
The Daeron, yeah. No, I don't think so. He's not a royal. I think I was very proud, actually, and kings didn't marry their daughters to, random people. So, but there were literally no people left then. But okay, so that was my thinking about, like maybe it's not just because Beren is immortal. He just didn't want to let her go, something like that. Maybe.
Well, I think you're onto something there. And the reason I think that is because the very first version of the story, the Book of Lost Tales version, which I've just actually read for the first time properly.
Yeah.
I've read the lay version in the Lays of Beleriand before, but I just read the version with Tevildo, the Prince of Cats.
Oh my God, Sauron's! I told you that it's so cool. Okay, people, so we need to reference this here.
Cheese, but it's good cheese.
It is so good. I mean, Tevildo, Shakespeare reference, first of all. But then Sauron started off as a Prince of Cats. So, Tolkien didn't like cats. That is a thing. And yeah, Sauron was the Prince of Cats before. I think that was in the Lays of Lúthien, right? In that version.
No, I think the Lay of Lúthien version, it moves on from the cats thing at that point.
And it's Tale of Tinúviel.
The Tale of Tinúviel is the Book of Lost Tales version.
Yeah.
With the cats and. Yeah. And then we do move on to werewolves in the Lay of Lúthien version.
Yes.
But the difference there is Sauron's not called Sauron. He's called Thu the Necromancer. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yeah, he had many names before he became Sauron.
But what I was going to say was in that first version, the Book of Lost Tales version, Beren is he's an elf in that version as well. So if we think about Thingol's kind of attitude towards Beren in the Silmarillion version, that attitude probably doesn't come from just purely his immortal. It's like I say, it's parochialism. It's maybe even I'd extend it to say xenophobia a little bit. It's it's this cultural my daughter is too good for the likes of you. It's fear of the other a little bit, I think.
Exactly, and this is what is shown with how his kingdom is portrayed. They are very secluded from the world, from the rest of the world. He doesn't mingle with the rest of the world. He has his little kingdom there, and he doesn't care about the what is. I mean, he has the girdle protecting him. Pretty good situation for him, and it plays into that.
The other reason I really don't like Thingol is he doesn't listen to his wife ever.
I know, poor Melian.
She's probably the smartest person in the Silmarillion. She's always got on the right side of everything. I mean,
she said that somebody like Baron will come and the girl will fall in it. She predicted that.
She said it. She said it at the beginning of the story. She said after he asks for the Silmaril, she's like, "Oh my god, this dude!" Like, he's like, "Do you know what you've done here? You've just tied yourself in with a curse." Like,
yes.
I feel really bad for her. But do you think when they first meet in the forest of Nan Elmoth,
Melian and Thingol?
Yeah, I'm talking about the parents again here, Melian and Thingol. It's her enchantment that's put on him, where they freeze in time and the years go by and the trees grow around them under the starlight. But it's not conscious on her part, is it? Because she couldn't have chosen to have, frozen herself in that situation like that. It's an unconscious effect when they meet.
Yes.
Do you think that is Ilúvatar's intervention at that point? That's what's happening? Because I think that this because that's the very, very first starting point of this tale of the half-elven, the bloodline that starts with their meeting, with Lúthien being born, and then her falling in love with Beren, and then Dior, etc. But the very first moment is when they meet, and it's a very weird moment in the Silmarillion, and I've been thinking about it ever since I covered that chapter on my channel. That perhaps that moment is just it's intervention.
Yeah, because it's not we learned, for example, Eol. He puts kind of, it is hinted at that he kind of puts a spell on Aredel, the White Lady of the Noldor, when they fall in love, right? Because it's also, they meet and then he kind of enchanted her. This is, I don't think it is Melian doing anything, really. It is a very strange description. You're completely right. For me, it was more, I never thought about it like that, but you could be onto something. For me, it was more like portraying that feeling of meeting somebody and you fall in love with, and then nothing else matters, because that's because it's a chemical reaction in our brains, right? And that's proven. And I think it's more the portrayal of that, but you are right. The Valar and Manwë,
I think it is. Sorry, go on. Sorry, finish.
Yeah, no, the Valar, Manwë, and all of them, they interfere. It is proven that they interfere. They send eagles. They said, it is proven. Like what is done to Tuor, that he is sent to Gondolin with the armor and stuff like that. That is interference.
Yeah. I think it is both. I think it is interference. I think it's the beginning of the divine plan, but I think it's love manifesting, and that being the seed of that plan.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful story, but it makes you think a lot as well.
And the thing is, he was on his way to Valinor when that happened. So you must. So the thing is, he would have left Middle-earth. That whole family he founded in Middle-earth, and by founding Doriath, which will become very important later on in the storyline, meeting Melian, that is very important. He would have left to Valinor with his brother and the other light elves. He would have gone back to Valinor. That was what he was doing. And then he stopped and didn't go and didn't leave Middle-earth, because as one of the only ones, because all the other ones, some Cinder but they left earlier. They stayed behind. But he was a king of the 3 tribes of the elves, and he was the king. But he didn't go. He stayed as the only one in Middle Earth.
That one moment changed all of history, didn't it?
It did.
When you look at it like that.
Yeah, it would have been a completely different story if he would have gone to Valinor and stayed there, and he wouldn't have gone with Noldor back to Middle Earth. So he would have stayed forever in Valinor, never meeting Melian, because Melian was in Middle Earth. Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, we're skipping way ahead, but we're not telling the story, so it's fine. But when he eventually dies after the end of the Beren and Lúthien story, there's a line in the Silmarillion where I think it says something like a change came over her, or something like that, where it's like
over Melian,
where a switch had been flipped, and that it was like her job was done, as my reading of it anyway.
Yeah.
Because we should probably get back onto Lúthien,
no.
But yeah, it's really interesting, like, genesis of the story, I think.
It is, yes. I would completely agree to that. And the foundation of so many things that later happen. Okay, so we talked about that. So, yes, then we have really cool stuff happening. Just to fast forward a little bit. So we have that scene, and, I was talking about my fairy tale references, and we mentioned that one. So obviously he imprisons her in a tower, so she can. Oh no, let's talk about the scene. Do you, by accident, have what he and Beren, like the dialogue between him and Beren in the throne room? Do you have that here?
I don't have it in front of me, but I can find it quickly.
Because that's so cool.
I can find it on the e-text relatively quickly, I think.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people can relate. It is the and that's a really cool. While you find it, I'll tell the story. So often in fairy tales, at least in Germanic fairy tales, there is the part of the very reluctant father-in-law, or the father of the princess or the woman in question, who then sends the hero on a task and on a mission which is literally he can never accomplish. And this is exactly what Thingol does to Beren. And what he wants him to do is rescue a Silmaril. And first of all, what you said earlier, this now puts this family who lived secluded in their kingdom and who was not touched by the curse of the Noldor, now he puts himself into that storyline by wanting a Silmaril. I also always ask myself, how does he even, he knows obviously of the theft of the Silmaril and Morgoth having it. How did it, what made him think? Is that, again, Arrow intervening, because that could be, or the Valar intervening with putting the thought in, because Thingol could have said anything. He could have said, I don't know, I'm making something up now, but he could have said, bring me Kacharoth, or bring me, I don't know, bring me Maeglin's head, or I have no idea, but do something. But of him wanting all of a sudden a Silmaril. He doesn't even like the Noldor. He probably would hate Fëanor.
He's never seen the Silmarils in person.
And he's never seen them, so why would he want? It's weird. Obviously, he knows Morgoth is like the big baddie. So take something from Morgoth that is like a quest which is basically nobody can fulfill. Especially not a human, which is his thinking, a mortal. So weird. Again, I always thought about that. What made him pick that? But maybe it was supposed to be that their faith now got interwoven in the faith of the Noldor, in the curse of the Noldor. So that was important to happen. So do you have it?
I do. Where do you want to read this? Where do you want to read from? Because we've got a couple of pages here of back and forth a little bit. Do you want to start with kind of the end, like
because the end is the best.
The bit about the Silmarils.
Yes. Like you give your daughters away for so little. That part. That elven fathers or elven kings give away their daughters for such a little thing.
Yeah. Okay. So Melian has just said. I'm going to put it on my main monitor here so I can read better. Melian has just said to Thingol. Melian leaned to Thingol's side, and in whispered counsel bade him forego his wrath. For not by you, she said, shall Beren be slain, and far and free does his fate lead him in the end, yet it is wound with yours. Take heed. So she's warning him. She's trying her best, but he's not listening.
No.
And their Thingol looked in silence upon Lúthien, and he thought in his heart, unhappy men, children of little lords and brief kings, shall such as these lay hands on you and yet live. Then breaking the silence, he said, I see the ring, son of Barahir. That's the ring of Barahir that we see in the Lord of the Rings movies.
That's the promise. Yeah, exactly. We see it in the movies, yeah.
And I perceive that you are proud and deem yourself mighty. But a father's deeds, even had his service been rendered to me, avail not to win the daughter of Thingol and Melian. See now, I too desire a treasure that is withheld, for rock and steel and the fires of Morgoth keep the jewel that I would possess against all the powers of the elf kingdoms. Yet I hear you say that bonds such as these do not daunt you. Go your way, therefore. Bring to me in your hand a Silmaril from Morgoth's crown, and then, if she will, Lúthien may set her hand in yours. Then you shall have my jewel, and though the fate of Arda lie within the Silmarils, yet you shall hold me generous. So it's quite the monologue there. It
is, yeah. He loves that stuff. And again, hand foreshadowing a lot.
A lot, yeah. I mean, it's foreshadowing what happens at the end of the story, of course.
Yeah.
It's foreshadowing what happens in a few other stories as well.
Yes. Frodo,
Sauron, obviously.
Sauron.
Luke Skywalker. A few others. But yeah, Jamie Lannister.
Right, Jamie.
But yeah,
the whole thing. Yeah, good. So this happens. So the king sends him on a quest he can't fulfill, basically, and that is a so I love German fairy tales and I love the Brothers Grimm, and there's exactly that tale. It's called Der Teufel mit den 3 Haaren, which is I think the devil with the 3 golden hairs, and this is. Do you know that story?
No, I don't.
Yeah. Okay. No. It's from a so it's a boy who gets there's a prophecy going on, and it's about a boy, and he gets the king wants the prophecy not to happen, and the boy gets found by a family and get raised. I think they're millers or something like that, and he gets raised by them and everything. And then obviously he meets the princess one day, and the father sends him on a quest to the devil, which is Morgoth is the devil, right? So he sends him on a quest to the devil and get 3 golden hairs to prove that he was with the devil and he survived it, to bring him 3 golden hairs from the devil. And he goes on that journey, and he has to, there are many quests to go there, and it's very similar. So obviously Tolkien knew that story, and because it's Brothers Grimm, it's really old, and he loved Brothers Grimm, and yeah, so it's very similar to that story. Then we have, when Lúthien is in the tower and she's growing her hair, that is Rapunzel, and also the you mentioned the Welsh tale. I
Yeah,
cannot.
I've googled it while we've been talking actually, because
Yeah,
I
I
mentioned it
cannot pronounce
before we
it.
started, and I couldn't remember the name of it then. But I've just
Yeah.
looked it up. It's Colwick and Olwyn.
Mm.
I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's an Arthurian tale, which
It's
is
Arthurian, yes.
I don't
Yeah, that
know
one
too much about it. I looked it up a long time ago, and I can't really remember much about it.
yeah, yeah. I know all the biblical reference because we'll get now to so thing is they then go on that quest together. That's like the culmination of the story, and that is what I always say and what I find so cool, because normally it's just the hero going on the story. This is how these stories go, right? And the princess is waiting at home and waiting for him to fulfill the oath, whatever, and coming back, and then they get married and live happily ever after. This is not what happened here, and this is what brings Lúthien to our topic of epic warriors now.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, because she decides, and to be fair, Beren gets caught by Sauron's spies, and him and so the Ring of Barra here comes into play, because that's Finrod swore an oath to Beren's father and to that line, and this is how he got the ring, that if he's ever in need of a friend, he will come and aid him. And he does, and just accompanied by a few people, because the evil Noldor princes are in Nargothrond. And then
that's where they come into the story and start sowing their evil seeds, don't they?
Yes, and it's so, if you think about it, like, he is the king of Nargothrond. He founded that city. He is a prince in his own right? And none of his people, I think, how many, 11 or 7, one of
I think it's 10.
Oh, is it 10? Okay.
As I remember.
Normally, it's either 11, 3 or 7 in Tolkien, but okay, this time, well, with him,
usually it's always
odd
numbers, isn't it? Yeah, you're right.
Yes, I know. But with him, it's 11 then. So they accompany the king who wants to aid, fully knowing that this will be his end. So he accompanies Beren on this mission, and they get caught by Sauron, and they are in Tolingauroth, the Isle of Werewolves, which is so cool.
Yeah, love that name.
Same. And they get captured there, and one by one Sauron, because he doesn't know what are these people on, what is happening, and he doesn't even know who Beren is, or who that this is the king of Nargothrond, and one by one he kills them, and they are just Beren and left. Beren and, sorry, it's very late.
Finrod?
Finrod, yes. Finrod Felagund. They are just left, and Finrod knows Beren would be next, and then he fights with the werewolf with his bare hands, and he dies. Spoiler. So Beren is the last one standing, basically, and then Lúthien comes.
They have an epic fight, don't they? Finrod and Sauron have this the face-off, which was a kind of like it's like a musical, like sound clash.
Singing contest.
They have a rap battle.
But that's in the beginning, and then they get caught. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the singing is really important in Beren and Lúthien, because it's a duel of a power duel, basically. Song is really important for Tolkien, and song puts fear in your enemies' hearts and stuff like that, and it's really cool. But obviously Sauron is a Maya, and Finrod, yes, he is a mighty prince and an elf, but he can't stand against Sauron. So yeah, he gets killed, and Lúthien comes into play, and this is, Beren would have died, so the quest would never be fulfilled if not for Lúthien. And she she basically tears down the walls and the tower of Tolingauroth, and Huan the Hound, who's one of my favorites, I love him, so he's a hound from Valinor. I think he's Oromo's hound, right, originally.
I think so. Yeah, as far as I
Yeah.
recall, I think
Yeah,
you're right.
Orome has all the cool beasts. He has Naha, Naha is the horse, I think. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
the
right.
forefather of the Meras. And yeah, he has all the cool beasts. So with the help of Huan the Hound, which is not a normal dog, it's like literally a giant dog.
And he seems to be immortal as well, doesn't he? Huan the Hound. I mean, he lives for a long, long time.
Yeah.
We don't really know what his sort of nature is in that sense, but he might be a Maya, maybe. But there's a thing about Juan as well where he
With the
has this.
speech, he can
Yeah,
only
he can only
three.
speak 3 times, which I think is only in the later versions.
Mhm.
I don't remember it being mentioned in the Lay of Lothian even.
But that was not as fleshed
Could be wrong
out,
about that.
like, yeah, but that was
Well,
not as fleshed.
it was pretty fleshed out. It just wasn't finished.
Yes,
The
but the
Lay
book
of
of
Lothian.
Beren and Luthien is way more. I mean, the Silmarillion part is even small, but Beren and Luthien book is way more. Yeah. So they tear down the walls. They rescue Beren. Sauron flees in he becomes a bat and flies away to his wherever he's going. He's not going to Morgoth because he doesn't know they're on their way to Morgoth. And then they continue their journey. A lot happens. The princes of the Noldor come into play as well, and they want to capture Lúthien and blah blah blah. And
Lúthien seems to have different effects on different characters, doesn't she? Because so she has this. People are enamored of her. She's gorgeous. She's she's the fairest maiden who ever lived, etc. But there's a lot of different evil intents that come into the when she finally does meet Morgoth. There's this evil lust that he has.
oh my god, yes.
And
Which
and what made me think of it was the brothers. I think it's Curifin wants to marry her, doesn't he?
Yeah.
But it's not an earnest kind of love. It's not
it's possession,
it's
right?
what can I get out of this? And
Exactly. Yeah, it's possession. So he wants the kingdom because she's the heir, basically. And we know how that kind of love, forced love, plays out in Tolkien. Even, I mean, I mentioned Eol and Arendelle before, like same concept, right? So a lot happens, and they reach Morgoth. And this now gets really cool because, I love biblical references. And when I read that for the first time, first of all, there is a really cool, do you know it's a German band, it's Blind Guardian.
Yes, I do.
Yes. And I mean, their album cover is Lúthien dancing in front of Morgoth. And what is the album's name? Isn't it?
It's I've forgotten. It's been a
Isn't
while.
it something with Silmarillion, blah blah blah? Or the Ring?
It is. There's a Silmarillion concept album.
Yeah, exactly. So there are many songs. There's even a song called "The Ring" or something on it. It's really good. Listen to it, people, because it gives you the vibe and the feeling.
The album that I know of theirs is called Nightfall in Middle Earth,
Exactly.
it's basically it's like
yeah,
it's like a concept album, the Silmarillion.
Yeah, it's really good.
It is.
But then there are different things in there. So Lúthien is so they reach Morgoth, which is kind of impossible because how do they reach it? First of all, they go there in disguise. So they kill. Super cool story. It's such a shame we don't know more about the character, the vampire princess, or the vampire queen, whatever. Turinguetil. So they kill her, and she kind of wears her vampire fur outfit, and she becomes Turinguetil. Beren becomes a werewolf or something. I do not really remember.
Now or something.
Yeah.
I've forgotten the name. Damn it.
Yeah. Well, it's not Kacharoth because Kacharoth is then later in front of Morgoth's halls. But he still lets them in because they're in disguise, right? And so they could reach the throne room, and there Morgoth is. And now Morgoth's description changes because we know Morgoth, as the mightiest of the Valar, and it's never mentioned that he lusts for the Silmarils, but that is a very different concept. And now this beautiful elf, and Morgoth is not a big fan of the elves, now this beautiful half Maya half elf woman is standing there and she's dancing. And if you read that scene, and if you know the Bible a little bit, or parts, and I think that is in the New Testament, even it's not in the Old, I'm not 100% sure, but it's the dance of the seven veils. It's in the Bible, it's not the seven veils, in the Bible it's just the dance of Salome. And I think later on it becomes a dance of the seven veils. So it's a beautiful woman dancing in front of a king and chanting him, and that, when I read that was 100% what it reminded me of. I don't know if he was influenced by that, but
he certainly would have known about it, so I'm sure he would have been influenced with it.
Exactly. So, and there's even a I think a Richard Strauss opera of the Dance of the Seven Veils, and the music is beautiful if you like that kind of stuff. But then also another fairy tale comes in, because Morgoth fell asleep. So just saying, Sleeping Beauty, the whole court basically falls asleep. So that's again her powers. We were talking about what are her powers. It's not really described how she did that. She didn't cast a spell or say
no, there's no incantation or anything. It's just it just seems to be innate.
But often Tolkien doesn't describe magic, he doesn't say he said a spell and then this and this happened. So magic is a very vague concept in Tolkien.
Can I do another reading, if you wouldn't mind? Yes. Because I did dog ear this section in the Lay of Lúthien, and I really like this section in that version. So let me grab that from the Baron of Lúthien.
Yay.
So I'm going to read some poetry, guys.
Oh, yay.
There's no way this is going to be embarrassing when I watch it back. Cool. All right. She let her flying raiment sweep, enmeshed with woven spells of sleep. As round the dark void she ranged and reeled, from wall to wall she turned and wheeled, in dance such as never elf nor fay before devised, nor since that day. Than swallow swifter than flitter mouse, in dying light round darkened house, with silken soft more strange and fair than sylphine maidens of the air, whose wings in Varda's heavenly hall in rhythmic movement beat and fall. So that's the first little mini stanza. There's a indentation. So I'll just explain a couple of things there. Flittermouse. Do you know what a flittermouse is?
No.
It's a
Fledermaus. It's a bat.
Yeah.
Okay, so the German word is Fledermaus.
Is that right? So,
yes.
Okay, cool.
A bat is Fledermaus.
So it's a slightly archaic English word.
It's archaic, yeah.
But it makes sense. Rodents of the
must
sky.
Must be a Germanic word.
Must be, yeah.
Fledermaus.
Yeah, must have been influenced there. And the Sylphine Maidens. A sylph is like a sort of like a flying luminous spirit kind of thing.
The concept of elves, of fairy godmothers.
Yeah, this is going back to the fairy tale roots of this story. It's basically it is a fairy, and fairies are elves in the Book of Lost Tales kind of tradition. So I'll continue.
So just a thing, because if you read the on fairies, his essay
on fairy stories, not in a while, but yeah, I've read it for sure. Yeah.
Well, and this is what elves are based on, right? So this is cool that he brings this into this and describes her as the original concept of elves. Isn't that cool?
Oh yeah.
I do not remember
Tolkien's thing about elves was that elves are, they are majestic, luminous beings, but they're large.
The fair,
he didn't like the kind of like the tiny elves, the kind of like the Keebler elves or the Christmas elves. Like he wasn't a fan of that kind of thing. Which is funny because if you actually read some of his very early stuff, there are these diminutive elf stories in places. So he, like in his early days, he wasn't quite as stringent on that point. yeah, we're getting off topic there. But yeah, it's the whole thing about like kind of like the fairy tale elf, and his thing was that. So when for movie fans who know the line from Galadriel where she says, "I will diminish and go into the west and remain Galadriel," right? That line, like on a very like literal level, it means I will take a back seat and I'll let events take their course and I'll see what happens, and I won't take the ring and become evil Galadriel. But the I will diminish. That is what happens to the elves. They do diminish, and they become lesser spirits, and they become in the background world of our world, and that is his mythological connection to our world.
They burn out basically.
Their
flames. And this is how a lot of them end. You see I want to say Meglin, no, Medros and who's the one who wanders on the shores after throwing the Silmaril in the sea? Meglo throws it into the volcano, and the other one who throws it into the sea is
forgotten.
Well, the other brother who has a Silmaril, and he vanishes. It's just like something like his spirit just wanders Middle-earth shores for the rest of the time. It's that concept.
So shall I carry on with my poetry recital?
Yes, please. It's beautiful. I'm learning something new. I haven't read that in a long time.
I love this whole passage. Down crumpled orc and Balrog proud, all eyes were quenched, all heads were bowed. The fires of heart and moor were stilled, and ever like a bird she thrilled above a lightness world forlorn, in ecstasy enchanted born. All eyes were quenched, save those that glared in Morgoth's lowering brows and stared, in slowly wandering wander round, and slow were in enchantment bound. Their will wavered, and their fire failed, and as beneath his brows they paled, the Silmarils like stars were kindled, that in the reek of earth had dwindled, escaping upwards clear to shine, glistening marvellous in heaven's mine. So it's Morgoth getting sleepy.
Yes, and the Silmarils getting into action.
And the Silmarils are sparking up, which I don't remember that from the Silmarillion version. The Silmarils igniting and...
No, but that would make sense now with the Baron, what happens with Baron next, because Silmarils get into action and, they are beautiful. People want to possess it. And it's not just Morgoth who falls for that. Now it's Baron as well, because what was his quest? To get one Silmaril. So Lúthien did all that work, put Morgoth to sleep, right? Doing her dance. And then his job is, to get the Silmaril from the crown of the sleeping almighty Vala. And he does that. But then he's like, wait a moment, there are 3. I can take another one. And maybe, that is but then I don't know why he didn't. Well, but then Christopher.
Well, Christopher draws in the Silmarillion version. Christopher draws on the Lay of Lúthien in some of the parts that were unfinished. So this is one of the stories in the Silmarillion where he actually wrote some of his own bits and pieces, but it was taken from this.
Yeah, I know, but often Christopher has other focuses, and Christopher is very, what I feel like, I don't know, I'm not Christopher, but I feel sometimes his focus is on something else, and he wants to point that out, and he forgets to add other stuff that maybe was important. That happens sometimes. When more than just the Silmarillion, when the Lost Tales, and when the history of Middle-earth. Versions of some of the stories in the Silmarillion.
Sure, yeah. There was one more stanza that I wanted to read. Shall I go ahead?
Yes, it's beautiful.
Then flaring suddenly they fell, down, down upon the floors of hell. The dark and mighty head was bowed like mountain top beneath a cloud. The shoulders foundered, the vast form crashed, as if crashed. As in overwhelming storm, huge cliffs in ruin slide and fall, and prone lay Morgoth in his hall. His crown there rolled upon the ground, a wheel of thunder, then all sound died, and a silence grew as deep as were the heart of earth asleep.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the bigger they are, the harder they fall, and boy does Morgoth have a fall.
Exactly.
There's a few embarrassed Dark Lords here in this story, isn't there?
And he only wakes because Dan Baron cuts, the second Cimmeral, and I think a shard of the crown or of the knife cuts his face, and this is how he wakes up. And then hell breaks loose, and they have to flee. And there are epic fights with the mentioned Kaicharoth.
Yeah, this is shortly after this. This is where the Lay of Lúthien version cuts off, and we pick up with the Silmarillion version again. Yes. Really, yes. Karkaroth bites Baron's hand off, and then the eagles show up as ever, which won't be a surprise to anybody.
Interference of the Valar, just saying.
Mando. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Going back to that section there though, where the Silmarils light up like that, I wonder whether that is again intervention, like it's providence, like it's almost like a fated moment where the Silmarils just sort of spark into life like that. No,
for me the Silmarils were never touched by Eru. For me the Silmarils were always, and I think like a standalone concept of something like the ring. And again, this is just my opinion, but I think Eru and the Valar don't have any power over the Silmarils, and this is what makes them so special. And they kind of have a mind and a life of their own. It's very similar to the ring then later. And I do not think he can make the Silmarils do anything. But then again, Vada's power is not Vada's power. Whose power is in this? Whose light?
Well, so the light of the trees, isn't it? So
it's the light of the trees.
Effectively, in a way, it's Yavanna.
It's Yavanna. Yeah, me basically. I'm voicing Yavanna. Yeah. Sorry, I forgot. I forgot. So Yavanna is a creature of Eru, right? So even the light she creates and the tree she creates is from Eru. Everything comes from him, right? He gave everything life. But I don't know. I know they can influence a lot, and they do with the eagles and with other stuff. But I think for me, the Silmarils always were like a standalone concept. Yes, made by Feanor, but I don't know. It stands for like a symbol of don't get too greedy, because a lot of people fall for it. Even Thingol, it's more like a learning. Oh, hey, you're cracking a beer, or what is that?
Yeah, I just remembered I had a beer next to me.
I wish I had a beer. I just have my water. So that's what I think, but that's completely my and you see, in the end, it's how do they end? They get destroyed, but then they become part of the world again. How they get destroyed, and then it's given back to Eru and the world. But their being, but that's just their destruction, but their being is a different concept, and it stands for failure of men wanting them, failure of the mighty elves who are actually, like boring good guys. Even they fell. So for me, they're more like a symbol, but again, it's just me.
But yeah, Lúthien, what a cool character. Because, we've said it a few times now, but Beren wouldn't have gotten very far without her. No. He wouldn't have gotten very far without Huan either. I think he's actually almost a good candidate for warriorness.
Yes. He has all the good fights.
Yeah. There's a great bit where he takes Karkaroth by the throat, and then he dies in the attempt. It's a bit it's tragic.
Exactly. Spoiler, he dies, but still, he kills the baddie in the end, and they all actually kind of die because, well, Thingol dies later because they go for the hunt.
Much later.
Yeah.
Beren, what happens is Beren and Lúthien. There was another reading I wanted to do. We'll get to it, I think, maybe if you're not getting too tired. Where Lúthien kind of sings to Mandos to free Beren from the halls of the dead, which I love that part as well.
Yes, and that is, again, what is that, Dan? That is Orpheus and Eurydike. I do not know how you pronounce it. Do you know that story? The Greek mythology?
I don't. I probably do, actually, because I do know my Greek mythology, but I'm not sure if I know that one.
Yeah, so so Orpheus and Eurydike, they are a couple, and she gets bitten by a snake and she dies. And Orpheus is singing for her and mourning her in despair, and this is exactly what it's him singing, but now it's Lúthien singing for Mandos, and telling him basically what happened, and he feels so sorry for her that something happens for the first time. We see that concept later on with Glorfindel, for example, but Glorfindel didn't plea for it. Glorfindel was resurrected, or Gandalf were resurrected for a reason.
Yeah, those two were given a mission, or their mission was renewed, or something along those lines. But something changed metaphysically when Lúthien pleads with Mandos and Beren is reincarnated. Something changes. It's the beginning of. We're sounding a bit almost biblical with it, but it's not that really. I don't think. No. Maybe that's in there too. But
yes, it is in there. I would say, because of the concept of resurrection and doing, but this is different. I think doing good deeds like Glorfindel did, and then being resurrected, is the Christian concept behind it. So I think Glorfindel's story, or Gandalf even, reborn and then becoming Gandalf the White and all that. That is the Christian part of that. Lúthien's is different, and I feel it's not that biblical.
Because it's very personal, isn't it? It's very personal. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not you're brought back for
a reason.
It's what Tolkien, that letter that we started with. It's Tolkien's emotion there is personal. It's what he alludes to in that letter. If that letter that I read at the beginning was, I don't know if we said at the time, was it was written 2 months after Edith died. Yeah. So when he's talking there about the land of the dead who live, he's referring to the land that Beren and Lúthien go and live in together after he is resurrected.
The island, yes, they live on an island, and
he gives a different name for it in that letter than what's in the published Silmarillion, which has confused me when I read that. But yeah, can I read that passage?
Yes, please. Yeah.
I've got my sections dog-eared. I did this all on my lunch break earlier.
He sent me a picture on his lunch break with a beer and pizza, and I was sitting here doing my work PowerPoint boring stuff, and I was like, I want that. It's the best lunch break ever.
It's my only bright spot of my day until now. But Lúthien came to the halls of Mandos, where are the appointed places of the Eldaliae, beyond the mansions of the west, upon the confines of the world. There those that wait sit in the shadow of their thought. But her beauty was more than their beauty, and her sorrow deeper than their sorrows. And she knelt before Mandos and sang to him. The song of Lúthien before Mandos was the song most fair that ever in words was woven, and the song most sorrowful that ever the world shall hear. Unchanged, imperishable, it is sung still in Valinor beyond the hearing of the world, and listening the Valar are grieved. For Lúthien wove 2 themes of words, of the sorrow of the Eldar and the grief of men, of the 2 kindreds that were made by Ilúvatar to dwell in Arda, the kingdom of earth amid the innumerable stars. And as she knelt before him, her tears fell upon his feet like rain upon the stones. And Mandos was moved to pity, who never before was so moved, nor has been since.
So cool. And again, it foreshadows because it tells of she is woven together like the Vala did in the beginning of time, you know, when
It
in
harkens
the
back to that, doesn't it? For sure.
it
Yeah,
does.
the two themes, and that's the third theme of the
Yes.
music of the Ainu, where we're told that Eru introduces the children, the concept into the theme.
Exactly. And I think her doing this with the two, because they were the first that brought together the two races, the elves and the mortals, and she wove these themes together, foreshadowing again that they will have a child that is of both lines. Dior.
Yeah. So this is again alluding to what it's like you said. It's foreshadowing the line of the half elven, the Peridil, that epic bloodline that runs through the whole mythology. I remember asking you a question once when I was before we started doing these this series on your channel. I remember asking you a question when I was in chat when you were being interviewed. Do you have a favorite pet theory of yours, which is a Tolkien theory, which isn't provable? And you said your theory is that Tolkien himself is a descendant of that line too.
Yes.
And this is where that theory comes from, isn't it? Because Edith is very much Lúthien. She is his Lúthien in a loose metaphorical sense. I don't think, obviously, he doesn't really believe that, but
no, yes, and he says that this is a mythology which could be real. This is how he presents it, right? And this is our world, just the beginning of our world. And so, yes, that is part of that. There are other hints of names. Oh God, I forgot a lot of that. But
there is something where he signs a letter with something which alludes to him being
Strider, and exactly, and the name of Strider, and oh God, I read that years and years ago, but that was I read an essay about that from somebody who had that idea, and I think he even there are hints that he wants that to
that he wants that thought being in there, at least. I think
cool. So so she is re-embodied. They she chooses again, and this is the choice. I mean, the choice was given before them, because the choice was given in is it before them? What is Idril and Tuor's is Idril
the choice of the half elven is at the end of the Silmarillion. It's like the end of the Quenta.
So it's later. It's later, right?
Because
I'm not sure because Tuor and Idril, they are Gondolin. So, and their child is a half mortal, half elven, which is Eärendil, and he gets the choice of men. Later on, he gets the choice of being a mortal or an elf. Is Beren and Lúthien earlier? I'm not sure. I think it's the fall of Gondolin. Wait.
Beren and Lúthien is definitely before that, yeah.
Is it before? Okay.
So
they're the first. Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah, it's after the Nearnath, but it's before like Turin Turambar and Tuor and the fall of Gondolin.
It is before, right? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So they're the first ones with Dior, their child, who is half elven, half mortal. Sorry. So she she then chooses, because the thing is that Mandos offers her is she can't come back as Lúthien like she was before. She won't come back as an elf.
Yeah,
So
that's the choice that's given to her. But yeah, she's given the choice of, you know,
living one mortal life.
Yeah, exactly. Coming back as a mortal,
Yes.
or coming back, or, you know, living her life without him, being apart from him forevermore.
But that's a good thing.
And then when she does come back and she meets her mother, Melian knows that something's changed, and she feels it, and she's this sadness in her, which is heartbreaking.
Because the thing is, the second born of Ilúvatar's children, we don't know what happens to them. They're not going to the halls of Mandos. So Melian would have known that she would meet Lúthien again in the halls of Mandos, because Lúthien would still be immortal, right? Even if she would be slain by orcs or whatever one day, she would go to the halls of Mandos, and her mother could see her again. But she chose a mortal life, and therefore Melian knew Lúthien would vanish one day after dying her mortal life, which is sad, you know.
Yeah. Because she understands all this. She has a level of understanding that the rest of us don't have, and she has a kind of sense about what's happened, without having to ask it.
Well, she is from Valinor, so she was in Valinor before, so she knows the halls of Mandos. She knows all that.
She was there during the music. I mean, she knows more than anybody.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, so we got that covered as well. The resurrection, that living one mortal life together with her love, and this is what Arwen chooses, right? She chooses that as well, to be with Aragorn again, mirroring Lúthien's choice. And yeah, what you said, then they form the line of the Elros line, basically, of the half elven, who also later on have the choice of becoming either immortal, which Elrond's twin brother then chose and founded the Númenórean kings, the line of the Númenórean kings, and Eros stayed an elf. Yeah, so they are very important to the story overall, and it's, you know, it's, I think of it like, yes, it's a beautiful love story, and it has so many concepts of fairy tales in there, biblical references. You know, we named it all. No, we didn't name it all. There's way more in there, but you know, we tried. But it's so cool that the roles are reversed, and she's not the damsel in distress, and that she has a part in this, because I cannot stress enough that people always call out Tolkien for not having that many great female roles. And now we have, even, I was recently talking with John about Eowyn, right? And she is even a warrior. She is a warrior. We could talk about her because she's a warrior. But then there's people like Galadriel, and Galadriel is not a warrior per se, but she's powerful, right? And Lúthien combines everything, and it's so cool and beautiful, and I love that character. And you can see how he describes her, that yes, she's also based on his real life and his love for his wife, and that makes it so special, doesn't it? Because it's not just fairy tales and mythology, it's he waves his real life, he waves a fourth theme into here, and
and that magical entering of fairy when these characters meet, which we talked about with Thingol and Melian, but like particularly, I think it's more poignant when it comes to Beren and Lúthien.
Yes, and you don't have that very often.
That moment where it's like it's the mortal stepping into the immortal world, and it's the man entering fairy, and it's that moment where he's like enchanted by her beauty. I think I love that, because that's the personal element and the mythic element, and it's where the two meet. And if you've ever been in love, you know that moment.
Yes, yeah, that was what I was talking about. But she was more than just a beautiful face, and
Yeah.
that I found so cool because he could just describe her as, but all of these women, they are not like Idril. I love Idril, and it's so cool because she's the one who basically saves their asses and gets them out of Gondolin because she doesn't trust Maeglin. So she as well.
I mean, if the women were in charge of the Silmarillion from the
I
beginning,
know.
like
I know.
like honestly, it's always the men that mess everything up in the Silmarillion. Literally, the women, if they were in charge of everything, it'd be a different world.
Yeah, well, I mean, Aredel is a bit questionable, but I love her because she's Dora the Explorer. She's so cool. Trying to explore Middle Earth on her own, not just falling for the dark elf. Then, well, cool.
Well, what was that? Was that voluntary? I don't know.
No, I don't think it was. No. Otherwise, the end. The elves don't leave each other, right? They come together for life. Well, not all of them.
What about Miriel?
I know. Just she basically chose to die because her husband was that awful. And then she's waving tapestry, looking at what her son and his evil family do. Like, that's literally the worst.
That's the other side of where the mythic and the personal meet, isn't it? I suppose.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
Although that wasn't Tolkien's experience, by all accounts, but yeah, we're getting off topic.
Yes. Yeah. Cool. So, do you have anything to add here?
No, just thank you for inviting me to talk with you again about this, because it's one of my favorite topics. It's one of my favorite stories of Tolkien's. And I absolutely love the kind of gender role reversal of the classical fairy tale trope. And it's so far ahead of its time as well. I can't think of another example, contemporary example. There may be some, but you can't see C.S. Lewis writing this, can you?
No. Yeah, and I always say it is about a war, right? It's always about some war. I mean, especially the Lord of the Rings is a story about a war, the War of the Rings. And the thing is, women didn't partake in wars. They didn't fight in wars. And so it is cool that he gives women this chance to still play an important role.
And have adventures, and
have adventures, and
do brave deeds.
So people read the Silmarillion because all these good stories are in there. Oh, I can really recommend the Baron and Lúthien, the standalone book, because it's just really cool, it's so easy to read. It's, I think, Children of Húrin is a bit easier to read, but then Baron and Lúthien definitely. Yeah, and you learn a lot more than we just told you.
Christopher tells you a lot about the drafting process and how what years it was written in.
You can see
and it's not full and complete. I also recommend reading the Lay of Lúthien version, which I read a little bit of earlier on, because I really love that version. It unfortunately cuts short right after they get the Silmaril, so you don't get any of the stuff with the wolf at the end and any of that.
But you have that in the book and in the Silmarillion version.
Yeah. And there are some differences as well. Some of the names are a bit different, so it can be a bit confusing
because it's an earlier draft. Yes. So perfect, Dan. Thank you so much. We will agree on something else, another warrior for the next stream, and let us know what you.
We talked about having you on my channel, so we will do that, I think, hopefully soon.
That will happen. I'm going on holiday on Friday for 2 weeks. But I'll spam everybody with my Greek island pictures during the pandemic. Like, hey, Helen has a holiday. She deserves it. Yeah. And so what's happening on your channel? I will try to link your video. We were referencing here a lot down there. What is happening for you besides this?
I'm carrying on with the Silmarillion series. Still, there's a couple of chapters to go before Yavanna shows up again. So hopefully we'll get some more dialogue from you in there in a few weeks. I've just done a video on the thematic. Again, it's this story of the half-elven and the Peridil, and it's comparing that and the kind of the mythic prophetic elements of that storyline with Eärendil being a prophesied figure and Aragorn being the renewal of that same prophecy, and comparing that with Azor Ahai from George R.R. Martin, which dropped just recently. I also recorded with Robert from In Deep Geek recently as well, so I'll be appearing on that channel at some point.
Yay! When is he dropping it?
I'm not quite sure. He's tweeted about it, so I feel confident saying it. So I can talk about it. So it should come out within the next week or so, maybe, but don't know.
Yeah, and he just started this series about pre-recording Lord of the Ring topics.
Yes, yeah. So I'm talking there about the Silmarillion, just an overview of what the story is and what to expect on reading and trying to read it, and connections to the TV show as well in there.
Cool. Yay, excited for that. And yes, I can only recommend you're going through the Silmarillion because, it's not that easy to read. And I think if people just listen to your videos, they don't even need to read it, or they can decide then if they want to read it and know more. Maybe let's...
I've had at least 2 people tell me that they've bought the book.
I know. That's so cool. That's really cool.
Since I started, which is really good to hear.
It is. Yes, that's what we actually want to achieve.
Definitely.
Yeah. So for me, I'm doing this, this will be, and this was quite regular, and this will obviously continue. John and I will do something once a month, and I promise one day there'll be more law videos. I'm still writing my why we should be sorry or feel sorry, or should we feel sorry for the orcs video, because that was always I always asked myself that question when I learned that the orcs are tortured elves. So I'm writing on that video, but that it will take a bit of time because it is
actually something just occurred to me. I heard you say this. I watched your video already with John. Something occurred to me when I heard you talk about this with him, which was in the Beren and Lúthien, the Lay of Lúthien. There's a line in there about the orcs laughing about Morgoth and his embarrassment. There's a line in there about them secretly laughing about.
That's so cool.
I can't remember exactly how it goes, but yeah, it's a really cool line, which does make you think there is a little bit of elf still in there, maybe.
Maybe, yeah,
he does say that the orcs are irredeemable creatures, but
yes, he does. But he wanted to take back on the concept of how they were. This is why there are different concepts of what are the orcs, how were they created, and and if you read, I'm doing lots of research on the Ring of Morgoth's Ring, because there's a lot in there. So that will be a cool video, but it will take some time because there are so many references I have to pick from various books. So let's see. That might take some time, and I'll continue my Numenor stuff. Definitely, because I want to be the expert on Numenor. I love that part.
Funnily enough, I think all of us Lord of the Rings creators want to be the expert on Numenor at the moment.
I know.
I think I'll have to do some law videos on that too.
Yes, but it's so interesting, and there is so much to explore. Did you know that they had flying ships and stuff like that? Yeah. So they did. And it's not Vingelot. It's not Eärendil. So stuff like that. And it's really cool. So I'll do some Numenor videos next. Kings of Numenor I want to do because that's interesting, and I did that family tree thingy, and I want to explain the line of the Numenorean kings, and going into my theories of who's the witch king and when did it go wrong and stuff like that. So yeah, that's up for me. But next for me is a holiday. And I need that. So no content for 2 weeks, people. I'm sorry, not sorry. Good. So that was that. I hope you people enjoyed this, and Dan and I will keep you posted when we'll continue this, but it will be in 2020. Thank you. I enjoyed this, Dan, and see you soon. Bye bye, my lovelies.
Bye, people.
You need to say bye, Helen's lovelies. This is your
goodbye, Helen's lovelies.
Yay. Bye bye.
Bye.